What's up, Subaru people? It's a beautiful day here in upstate New York. And today we're going to do a lowering spring install on the 4th Gen Legacy GT. I found some Tein lowering springs on Facebook Marketplace for $20, so I couldn't pass it up. So we'll try these before we go to full coilovers. Let's get started. So the tools you're going to need for this job are 19 mil sockets for the bottom bolts on both the front and rear. You're going to need the 14 mil socket for the bolts up on the top of the strut, and a breaker bar. The bottom bolts can be tough. A hammer to, and a punch to punch out the bottom bolts if needed. Sometimes you don't need to. PB blaster. You're gonna need at least one jack and maybe two, but basically you can accomplish this at home with your own hand tools. It's not that difficult. If I can do it, so can you. Okay, so we're gonna start on the rears here. These can be tough to break loose. I've done 2 of these exact cars now. And I literally almost snapped a breaker bar doing the other car. The 2 back nuts were absolutely terrible. In fact, we had to go get it on a shop, take it to a shop to get it on a lift, so they could get a big enough breaker bar on it to break it loose, and it did. We just couldn't get it high enough to get a breaker bar under there. Okay, so first thing is it's 19 mils front and back. I put this breaker bar on. I've already broken it loose, but I put this breaker bar on, and it actually broke loose pretty easy. PB blaster, let it soak for overnight's ideal, but at least 10 or 15 minutes. Then I got a socket back right in here, right back in there, resting on the trailing arm. And yeah, so it's locked loose, so it can't go anywhere. But basically, you're just gonna break it all loose. That will kind of turn out, the nut will turn off. I'm going to set that aside. And then generally we probably should get a different jack and jack it up, take some of the pressure off this strut, and then the bolt should actually come right out. We should be able to punch this bolt out. I'll be right back. Alright, we're back. And I got a jack under here, just kind of relieving a bit of the pressure of the strut hanging down. So now I'm just going to try to punch this out with my favorite hammer and this punch. So let's see if we can't make this happen. That's a no-no. Should have had my face in there. But oh well. Cool. It's cool. Alright, so the bottom bolt is broken loose and off. It's a big one. And that's going to go back in this way with the nut on the outside. Now we're going to go up to the top and loosen out the nuts there, and really the coilover will probably just fall out at that point since I don't have another set of hands. Okay, so back in here you kind of have to disassemble some of the floor of the rear trunk of your wagon. Not really sure how it is on the sedans, but it's going to be sort of similar. It's probably back in the trunk, but here you can see I've disassembled the floor, and you can just see the bolts here. And you basically, it's a 14 mil, and you just got to take it off. And you probably should just get a socket rather than the wrench I'm using. Alright, so I'm gonna go at this with a wrench, I guess. It's just not really accessible otherwise. All right, so we're back outside the car. The jack's holding the strut up so it doesn't just fall out, but we're gonna take this jack away while I'm holding it so it doesn't fall out. And yeah, it just loosens right up, so I'm gonna take that out, and that's gonna just come right out very, very easily. Just like that. Okay, so basically, when you do these, be very careful. It's one of the most dangerous things to do when you're wrenching on cars. When you take this nut off, you should have spring compressors. Now I know there's not a lot of pressure on these, so I'm not going to use spring compressors, but this is not advisable, even though I'm going to do it anyways. Yeah, you know how it goes. But be careful anyways, and you'll see what I mean. It'll kind of, the top will kind of pop off. If there's a lot of force or you have a bigger car, it'll pop off with a lot of force and could really, really mess you up. So anyways, be careful when you do this. See, there's no pressure on these because these are the lowering spring struts. When I did these ones, which I didn't film and I should have, there was a little more pressure, not a ton, so it wasn't too bad. So then when I'm going to clean these up and then I'm going to put them back together and install them into the car. Alright, so we're going to put these back, clean them up a little bit, probably gonna, if these end up, if I like these, I'm probably going to end up buying all new struts. The struts in the front are pretty new, judging just by the condition. These ones are not, but they were still, you know, okay for the moment. So anyways, we're going to run these for a minute, and so basically all you're going to do is feed this back in. And feed it, look for the holes up here, feed it back in the hole. Then I'm going to bring a jack back under here so I can go up and, because I'm doing this alone, I can go up and put the nuts on up there. So we're going to run up and just twist the nuts on up there the way you saw earlier. And alright, so basically you can see the strut bolts coming through. So I'm just gonna basically twist these bolts on till they're pretty tight. Well, as tight as I can hand tight them. The other one's gonna be a little more tricky to get on, but we'll get her. So now basically we're going to compress the bottom of this strut up until it can meets with the hole, and then we can put this bolt back in. So like I said before, the bolt goes in this way, and it's not quite lined up. That might have done it. Yep, it looks like it's close.
sometimes you gotta play around with the bolt going in. It kind of sometimes, and you can see, I can see that the strut's not quite lined up. It still needs to turn more. So we're going to take this bolt back out. Check it. Going in. Another socket. To hold this bad boy. And just gonna tighten that up. Got the other socket on the back holding it. So we're gonna get onto the other side. I'm not gonna film it because it's exactly the same as this. Yeah, be careful when you take off that bolt. You don't get hit in the face like I almost did. Start by breaking these loose. And oh, and these weren't even tight. You gotta love when you find that. So that's loose. Let's try the next one. Okay, so that one's spinning. All right, so those are off. Now we gotta actually pull those out of there. But before I do that, I'm gonna take the brake line off here. That looks more like wheel speed sensor. But anyways, I'm gonna take that off, and then I'm gonna take the brake line back here. And I believe that's 14 millimeters. Okay, so I was wrong, it's 12. But yeah, just break it loose. And pull the little bracket off and tuck it out of the way, and you're good to go, just like that. And I'll take the, I'm gonna take the bolt right out of there, just so I don't lose it, since I already lost the one lug nut. But yeah, so that's broken. But I thought I was gonna need an extension right there. Would be a better choice of action, but it is what it is. Yeah, I got it. So these bolts are coming out easy. I just ratcheted them back. You might have to put a punch on here and punch them out, but these are coming off easy enough, just ratcheting them back. But be careful, as this hub is gonna want to flop around once these come out. So we're up on the top under the hood, and you need just to remove these 3 bolts. Just going to put the nut back on that one, and that one's the alignment bolt. Oops. and 2 bolts. Alright, so and careful of the CV boot, don't rip that right down there.
So once you get the strut put back together, feed the strut back up through. You want to try to get 2 bolts on here. I was able to do it myself and just feed it up through and then just thread a couple of bolts on there. And at least that'll hold it. I didn't tighten them down.
So I got this all lined back up. The 2 bolt 19mm bolts are tightening down right now. It's a little difficult to line the knuckle up with the end of the strut. I actually had to pry it up a little bit with a bar. It didn't hurt anything, it was fine. It went up pretty easy, and once I got a bolt in, it was fine. Even the bolt started, it was easy. Okay, that's good. Right there, put this in. This one. Tighten that back down. Doesn't need a ton of tension. And let's drop her down and see how she looks.